Hello Vivian, I am Erendira Chavez, and with this video I hope that you get a little more insight into who I am as an aspiring leader. And for this I would like to talk to you about why I think my communication skills along with my empathy will help me to pave the way to an effective global leadership. Like Galinsky and Schweitzer say, perspective taking helps leaders communicate more effectively, which I think encompass both empathy in taking other people's perspectives and communication in how to use said perspectives to achieve group goals. Now, along with great qualities, leaders also have shortcomings or things that need to strengthen. In my case, the ability to delegate that can undermine the trust with team members and not being emotionally achieving. That can lead to not relating goals set in the workplace, which in turn can be viewed as someone who doesn't care about results. While caring about people and their well-being is important, it is also essential to care and relate to the goals set by our teams and our superiors. Communication is essential in having healthy relationships with people in general. And when there are goals involved, it becomes of the essence. Because this is how you get people to understand the importance of what they are doing. Especially now that we are living in such a globalized society, for everyone is connected by the means of social media and everything becomes so instant. Good communication is important so that the message doesn't get lost. However, good communication is not always easy to achieve. And as I learned from Sue and Megan Wilkins in What's Your Ripple Effect, in order to achieve this, it is important to generate good rapport and engagement to help people feel a connection with you and what you represent as a leader, making them want to communicate with you and to listen to what you have to say. Communication hasn't always been a strength for me. In fact, I can say that it used to be a detractor. It was difficult for me to communicate because I found talking about emotions and opinions hard to do. There is a saying in Chinese medicine that says, one disease, long life. No disease, short life. Implying that when we are aware of what's wrong with us, we tend to it and are able to turn it into a strength, as opposed to just ignoring it, which will only make it worse in the long run. The realization that a weakness can be turned into a strength gave me the motivation I needed to start working in improving my communication skills. I've worked in different places and countries throughout my professional career, but there is one particular place that helped me really develop my communication skills. I used to be an event supervisor at a hotel in California, where we used to hold several functions, such as weddings and corporate events, all for big groups of people. This meant that I had to communicate effectively not only with my staff, but also with my superiors and with the customers. Being constantly exposed to all these interactions helped me to dig deep and reflect on what was preventing me from being able to communicate effectively. And one thing that I understood was that I had to understand the backgrounds of people that I was trying to communicate with. Because we all understand in different ways. We all come from different backgrounds and different places around the world. So when I started approaching people through their perspective instead of mine, I found that things got done much better and in a more efficient way. I also noticed that the working environment improved greatly. Effective communication created a sort of Stockholm syndrome of leadership, like Finkelstein points in Lessons of the Superbosses. People who were working directly with me found themselves more willing to participate and push themselves more to be able to achieve better outcomes, which translated into better feedback from customers and more functions being entrusted to my team. Another characteristic that I want to bring attention to that helps me be an effective leader is empathy. I developed empathy when I was looking into improving my communication skills. As I mentioned before, a good way of improving communication is through being empathic to the situations and the feelings of others around you. While exploring these as a means of improving my communication, I found that in my past experiences, all the places I have worked for that made me feel that I didn't want to be there had one thing in common: the lack of empathy from managers. While working at those places, I always knew I was uncomfortable. It was hard for me to pinpoint what was the reason. These mainly had to do with the fact that when I went to school, being an effective leader did not involve a lot of emotional intelligence. They were more focused on teaching that good leaders needed to deliver results and achieve goals no matter at what cost. So, of course, this train of thought led me to think that this was the way things should be done, and when you're just an employee, you just had to just deal with what was asked from you and ignore how you felt about it or how your bosses made you feel about it. This realization only grew my resolve to become an empathic leader stronger. As I learned from the article, The Rise of AI Makes Emotional Intelligence More Important, nowadays more and more functions that were thought to be exclusively human are being carried out by artificial intelligence. However, there are human characteristics that cannot be replaced by robots or AI, and being empathic is one of those characteristics. Developing empathy did not come easy to me, but I started with a simple approach. I asked every one of my colleagues how they were, and to stop to actually listen to their responses. From there, I started picking up on more subtle clues like body language that helped me understand that maybe someone was saying they were fine, but in reality they had something else going on. With this practice, people started slowly trusting me more and coming to me for advice. Empathy helped me create a lasting impression in people, and this is why I think empathy will continue to help me on my journey in developing leadership. Now, I want to talk a little bit about the skeletons in the closet, my stretches, or as I like to say, my developing abilities. When we took the Leadership Style Perception of Self by Paul Hersley and Kenneth Blanchard, I was not surprised when it told me that one of my shortcomings was delegating. I find that at moments when there is a lot of at stake, I tend to micromanage things. I want to keep the control of the situation, to feel secure, and to feel that things are getting done the right way, which it's usually just things being done the way I want them to, thus making it hard for me to delegate tasks to people, often because I think that they are not doing things properly. The fact that I find it hard to delegate to some extent also dwindles my efforts and achievements from being empathic and a good communicator. And like Robert Kepner mentions in his article, What to Ask the Person in the Mirror, when there is a crisis, people will look with more detail to their leaders. If a leader is composed and calm, people will respond accordingly. But if the leader responds by being stressed and shuts down, then people will no longer look up to that person as a good leader. So what comes next in my leadership journey is turning my lack of delegation into a strength. I have already taken the first step, which is identifying my lack of delegation in itself. The next step for me, like with developing empathy, will be starting small. So for the duration of this quarter, I will start to delegate home chores that I normally do myself because I don't trust others will do properly to other members of the household. These, I believe, will help me to start addressing the need to take control over things in a more controlled environment. I will start small, like delegating the making of the grocery list, until I am able to delegate meal cooking, which is very a big deal for me. Now, while this might seem like small changes, I believe that they will help me into understanding, and having other people doing things their own way doesn't necessarily mean that they are wrong. At the end of this exercise, I expect to be able to delegate more so that I can build an even better rapport with people, because they will know that I trust them and that I support their actions and the decisions that they make. When taking the emotional intelligence self-assessment, I was a bit surprised when one of my weak areas was emotionally achieving. However, after analyzing and thinking about this, I came to the conclusion that it is true that while I can communicate with others and understand their perspective, at a personal level, it is sometimes hard for me to motivate myself into doing what I know it's necessary to achieve goals. This also prevents me from setting realistic goals for myself. And whilst I enjoy helping others and giving feedback, this is not always true when it comes to myself. I rather receive feedback later rather than sooner, and I find that when it comes to myself, I find it hard to relate to tasks and goals. This is a shortcoming that I want to address because I believe that on improve it, it will eventually come into conflict with being empathetic and a good communicator. Because if I fail to set goals for myself and relate to them, this will translate into my professional life as someone who doesn't care about goals set by our team and our supervisor. Through the duration of this quarter, I will set myself something new to do every day. Small goals that are to be achieved on a daily basis, such as taking different routes to get to the bus, or walking the recommended 10,000 steps a day, or trying something that I haven't tried before, like a new food. And then I will reflect about what achieving these small goals means. Understanding that any goal can mean something at a personal level, and that it can bring joy in the sense of accomplishment. Even if you are never to do this task again, finding joy in the things we do, even if it's just for an assignment or a task being asked from us at the workplace, it will help me to be more emotionally achieving. And this will translate into me being able to pass this joy to others, like my future teams. This will also help generate better working environment where people will be able to set goals for themselves and achieve them at a professional and personal level, just for the joy that it brings. Like Nelson Mandela said, our greatest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. Being an effective leader means that we have to understand our powers, our strengths, to be able to communicate them to people around the world and from different backgrounds from ours, in order to be able to guide them and influence them to achieve greatness. Communication has been always brought forward when talking about effective leadership, yet it is hard to achieve. I understood this and worked hard to develop empathy that allowed me to convey my ideas better, which later translated into communicating goals and tasks appropriately in the work setting. These also helped me develop empathy because they both come hand in hand. Empathy has helped me connect with people at a more personal level, allowing for better interactions at the workplace and in an improvement of the work environment. But in developing these skills, I have forgotten to strengthen my delegation and my emotional achievements. By developing these two abilities, my next step on this journey to becoming a more effective leader, one that cares not only about results, but about the well-being of the people in their teams.